3, 2, 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hydration.
Yeah, I knew you had to do that.
They got to know. I'm accountable to them for the water that I drink.
Well, alrighty then.
Look at that. Jesus.
Today was such a beautiful thing that when you wore that shirt and you walked into somewhere, the first thing someone noticed was Jesus on your
That's
your
why
shirt.
I always try to wear like House of Rest or something.
And it was beautiful because
There's a security.
the security guard from where we went, and he started talking to you. And then after he came and he talked to him again as we were leaving at the register.
No, because he goes, what does your shirt say? Because I had a jacket.
Oh, yeah.
I said, Jesus is the senior pastor of my church. And he goes, that's right.
Yeah, but then he came back to you at the end when we were leaving.
He goes, where could I get one of those? That's the first thing he said when we were paying.
And so, we gave him a card and everything, and he just had a lot of questions. And then after we're walking out the door, and then he followed you. He followed you, and
I was like, I didn't take it. No,
when he followed, it's like immediately you know that there's more that God wants to do. Yeah. And I think that was so beautiful, man, because
he shared his heart.
He shared his heart, and he started like opening up with us. And
he was hurting. He goes, I'm hurting.
He goes, I'm hurting. And
his heart was hurting.
Yeah, and I just, what's your name? And then when he told me his name was Joseph, and I'm like, there's such a beautiful story in the Bible about Joseph, and I was like, can we pray for you? And yes, he accepted prayer. Man, we were just praying right at the entrance of the store. And it was beautiful because, I really believe that a lot of the times we don't constantly enough pray for people out. I think sometimes people get too busy, or they're always in a rush, or, and we don't stop. And even when we say God bless you or something, we just got to be able to turn around and just be like, hey, can I pray with you real quick, because sometimes they need that. Yeah. And a lot of the times they're going to be like, yes. So it's so important that we do that, along with the greetings and just always constantly blessing people, Yeah, I think it was beautiful. I'm glad you got a chance to direct them to a church nearby here as well.
Yeah, because the store we were at was literally about 3 blocks away from our affiliate church, Grace International Church.
Here in Stockton.
So I directed him there. And of course, we gave him a card in case he's ever in Modesto, but he wrote it down on the card, the name of the church in Stockton, which is actually Reach Worship Center here in Stockton. So, what else? Anything else before we dive into it?
Nope. Let's just get right into it.
Cool. I woke up, rain. I thought I was going to go on a bike ride. Yesterday I did my first bike ride of the year.
Yeah.
Wasn't going to happen. So, we wanted to talk about an Old Testament story. And I asked Sharon, I said, what should we talk about? And we brought up a few different stories, a few different passages. But she brought this story up, and I said, yeah, let's talk about that. So it's the story of Ruth, but more Naomi.
Yeah.
Should I give them a summary before we read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that way. This is way before. Oh, my God. Woo.
Babe, it is 8 o'clock.
Oh.
Stop
I thought it was
that.
late, sorry.
Stop it.
That was a fake yawn.
Stop it.
So, in the book of Ruth, let me see, how do I summarize it really quick? Is Naomi and her husband are from Israel, and a famine hit Israel. There was no food, there was no water. They didn't know what to do. They had 2 young boys. So they said, let's leave to the neighboring country, which was Moab.
Yeah, to Moab.
Yeah.
They were Moabites.
Who?
The women.
Oh, yeah, no. the women they're gonna meet. But right now we're talking about Naomi and the
Okay,
husband.
Sorry. Okay.
So Naomi and the husband are not Moabites; they're from Israel.
I know. I was talking about
The daughters.
Yeah, the daughters.
So this couple with 2 young boys decided to leave their country of Israel into Moab. This isn't a problem though, because Moab worshipped false gods. They worshiped false gods. They had their own religion. They had their own thing over there. And God had instructed the Hebrew people to stay away from the neighboring people because of their gods. But they left. They left Israel and they went for their family. So then the boys grow up and they marry 2 Moabite women. That's the ones you're talking about. But over time, Naomi, she gets old and her husband dies. So she's a widow. But at least she has 2 young boys, 2 strong men,
To carry on the name.
carry the name,
Carry the family.
to work, to provide, because she's an older woman now. Her husband's gone, but then the 2 boys both die themselves. So now all the men are gone.
Yeah.
Her husband is gone. Her 2 boys are gone. And now it's just her and 2 Moabite daughter-in-laws that worship other gods. And that's what puts us into the scene, into the story, into the scenario. What part do you have? I didn't even open my Bible yet. Do you have something, or you just not yet?
Yeah. Hold on.
So we're going to the book of Ruth. Let me find it here. It's not a very big book.
No, it's not.
So it's right before Samuel. There you are. Okay. It's only 4 chapters long, actually. So then...
So it's 18, starting at 18.
Yeah. Okay. No, way back.
I'm just talking about the one part that I talked about.
Okay.
You want to go back to 16?
Are you talking about 118?
Yes.
Oh. Well, let me talk up to that part then, because I haven't got up to that
Okay.
part. So it reaches a point where Naomi decides, there's nothing for me here in Moab.
I'm sorry, it was 120.
Okay, I was like, 118
Yeah,
makes no
120.
sense. I'm like, all right.
I'm using my phone today because I didn't charge my iPad.
So she has no husband, has no sons, has 2 daughter-in-laws that are Moabite women. They're still young. They're still beautiful. They still have an opportunity of life. She's old.
Yeah, Naomi. Even if she was to bear a child, even at her old age, they wouldn't even...
Yeah.
They'd be really old age by the time their children grew up. Her boys, yeah.
So she talks to the girls, and says, "Listen, I imagine it's like I love you, girls, but I'm gonna go back,
Yeah.
and I
You're
want
free to go home.
I want you. I'm releasing you, because she goes, I can't have more children, and even if I did, can you imagine how long that you would have to wait?
Yeah.
I can't. I have nothing to give to you." So just go back to your mom's house, go back home and live a good life. That life will deal with you and you can start all over. But me, I'm old. That's the first sign that there's bitterness. There's sadness, And then the first one, was sad. She cried, kissed her, but she kept going.
Mm-hmm.
Orpah? Is that what that? She kept going. She moved on. You can't say nothing bad about it. I mean, she loved Naomi, but she wasn't going to leave her country.
Yeah.
And actually in verse 11 is the part we're saying. She goes, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb? That's the part we're talking about. Anyways, it goes on. The story goes on, and they're crying and everything. And then the other daughter-in-law, Ruth, she doesn't go. She doesn't go, and actually she says in verse 16,
Yeah.
But Ruth said, she goes, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts you and me.
In the Message, it says, but Ruth said, don't force me to leave you. Don't make me go home. Where you go, I go, and where you live, I'll live. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you die, I'll die, and that's where I'll be buried. So help me, God. Not even death itself is going to come between us.
So Ruth was like, I have a feeling that Ruth saw the faith that this family had in God.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that Ruth sensed something different in their home than she sensed in other homes.
Yeah.
She saw something in this family when they would talk about their God. Maybe it was the way they would pray in the morning. Maybe the way they would pray as a family. Maybe it's the way they break bread and they think, who knows what she saw. But she knew that she was tied to Naomi. But here's the part that Sharon wanted to really throw out at you guys, and it's really important because it could get skipped. So she didn't go, but then she went back home. I'm sorry, she did go back home. Ruth went with her, and in verse 19, and it'll go into 20, yeah? 19 says, now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. So they went all the way into Israel, into Bethlehem, where we know that's where Jesus was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? Is that you? But she said to them, do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me.
Keep going.
I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi? Since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me.
So in the Message, it says, when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was soon buzzing. Is this really our Naomi? Catch that. It says our Naomi, you know? And after all this time, but she said, don't call me Naomi, call me bitter. The strong one has dealt me a bitter blow. I left here full of life, and God has brought me back with nothing but the clothes on my back. Why would you call me Naomi? God certainly doesn't. The strong one ruined me. And that has always stuck out to me. You know, because of the fact that now you have, Ruth, who has decided to leave everything that she has, everything she knew all her life, to now follow your life and to follow you.
She attached herself.
Yes, she did. And I would think that that's almost like, nowadays you would look at that as a disciple. If somebody was to, completely glean off of somebody and would want to attach themselves to somebody because they want to glean off of someone. But, Naomi was having a pity party.
Yeah, big one.
A really big pity party. And what self-confidence, what self-worth are you alluding to the person that you're discipling? Mm-hmm. And that's something that's so important. If we bring it back to now today, and if we look at it really, really good, because when you see that they're saying, is this really our Naomi? For somebody to call you our Naomi, it's because you were a woman of grand...
you were loved.
Yes, you were loved, and somebody that was really highly revered, that they had reverence towards you because you were obviously an amazing woman. For somebody to really take that ownership of you and to say that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that she kind of, everything that she went through, and even though she had the faith and it was a family of faith, it's so easy to sometimes crawl under a rock. no matter how seasoned you are, no matter how many years you've been serving the Lord. But sometimes it's really easy to crawl back under a rock and be like, it reminds me of Eeyore from
I know.
Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. Like, I'm just no good for nothing. But yet then God did so many things through your life. Yet then God made you noticeable to a young woman to follow you and cling herself unto you. But yet then you feel that you have no worth. And it was such a big pity party. And I think that a lot of us do that a lot of times. We decide to crawl under a rock if things didn't go the way that we thought was God's way, but really, truly, it was our way. Because God's ways never come back void. They never are wrong. It's usually our way that gets disappointed. And what we do is we're like, man, I tried and it didn't work out. Let me crawl under a rock. And then we have this pity party. And so that's why that stood out to me.
Well, I could see why she felt very blessed before. She had a husband.
Yeah.
She had 2 boys. In the Old Testament, to have a boy was a blessing for many reasons. One is a woman would be happy to have boys because that means in her old age, when her husband was old, her sons were going to take care of her because they were obligated. They didn't have old convalescent homes.
Yeah.
The families always took care of the elders. And when a woman had boys, she knew, I'm going to be taken care of. Why do you think Jesus on the cross, he's in pain, but his concern was for
his mother.
His mother, Mary.
His mother. Yeah.
Because Joseph was no longer around. He's probably passed away already. That's why he's not mentioned. Joseph was an older man because he was established. He already had a home for her and everything. So she was a widow. And as obligation, this is how strongly the Jewish people felt about that, is Jesus says, John, behold your mother. Mom, this is your son.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. So here she is with 2 boys. She has a husband, but then a famine hits Israel. And I have a feeling that she felt like she dipped out on everyone she loved when times got hard. Mm-hmm. But then it's kind of like she thought, well, now that the famine's over with, now I come back empty-handed. Now I feel dumb because I didn't go through the hardships with them.
Humiliation.
Yeah, she was humbled. Mm-hmm. And here she probably thought she was going to be rejected. She's like, are they going to reject me? Are they going to kick me out? Are they going to say, you're a Moabite now? You're a Moabite, leave. She didn't know what was going to happen. And I have a feeling that's why she told the daughter-in-laws, you know what? Just stay here. Because she didn't want them to see her humiliation, maybe. But it seems like she was
self-condemning herself.
Self-condemnation.
Yeah, it was self-condemning. And, when we self-condemn ourselves and everything, what we're doing is we're really putting up a wall for the blessings that we're to receive. And when we do that, because sometimes it's a lot thicker than what we think. We self-condemn ourselves, and what we're doing is we're speaking death unto ourselves every time when there's self-condemnation, and we don't realize. That's why I always say it's so important that even if it's under your breath, that people don't have to hear, but tell yourself you're beautiful, tell yourself you're loved, tell yourself, I love myself, thank you, Lord, because it's Jesus speaking to you through you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. When you look in the mirror, you got to be able to tell him, that you're blessed in this city, that you're blessed when you come in and when you go out, that you are the head and not the tail. Those are things that you just got to keep, just speaking life into yourself, because condemnation can really, really tear a person down to the point where they want to change their name, know?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Can you imagine going around and being called bitter? Hey, bitter.
Yeah, she's over here changing her name, telling me like that ain't my name anymore. Call me loser.
Yeah.
Call me loser. And I love the fact that it's almost like Ruth just kind of didn't say nothing. Yeah. She just kind of like, man, she's hurting. I'm not going to say anything. But what she did,
She did more than that.
what was beautiful was the fact that Ruth said, I need to earn my own place here. You know, and in order to tell you the ending of Naomi, I need to tell you a little bit about Ruth. Okay, so they come into the land and they have no men. And so, you know, like I grew up in the country, and my dad grew tomatoes. And when they would go in the tractor to pick up tomatoes, they always left tomatoes behind. They would just kind of fall and they'd be left over. You know, they'd fill the trucks, but there was always tomatoes. So anyways, in a sense, when people back then were picking grain, there's always a little bit left behind. So Naomi sent Ruth out to say, hey, maybe you can gather some of that grain so we can make some bread. You know, because they'd crush it and then they make bread. So like that way we can not die.
Yeah, and because
there was no men, there was no men to hunt.
No, and because she was younger and she had more of the energy and everything, actually Ruth did feel the need to go out there and become her provider so she can take care of her in that sense, you know.
Maybe she felt like she wanted to do what her husband would have done.
Yes, and that's how I feel sometimes, you know, and I think it's amazing the way, you know, God set her up to be in the families, in one of the family in Boaz's, in his land, you know, to where she can harvest and everything.
So she started picking in a field, and in the middle of her kind of picking leftovers, the owner came. His name was Boaz, and he goes, I don't know her. Who's that? Who's this? Who is that? You know, picking the leftovers. And one of the servants was like, oh, that's Ruth. That's Naomi's daughter-in-law. And Boaz was a relative of Naomi's.
A cousin.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, okay. And he saw so much integrity in a woman that left her own nation. And here she is literally picking up leftovers so she can feed Naomi. See, to Boaz, that was a show of integrity.
Well, and it's a show of humility as well, because we got to remember that when you have harvesters that are picking up grain, this is their keep, you know. They're making an income, so to say, for themselves because of what they get to take home, you know, and how they get paid and everything. So do you really, really honestly think that harvesters are going to be dropping any droppings? Rarely. Yeah. So that means that Ruth was behind, you know, these harvesters picking up the little bit that she could
out of the dust
the little bit that she could. And that showed great humility. And I thought that was so beautiful. To me, I think that was something that it grabbed my heart, because I said, what humbleness for her to be able to pick the leftovers of the harvesters. And what would harvesters even leave behind, which is barely nothing, but yet she did it. And she worked hard doing it. And
Boaz said it. He says, she's a woman of integrity.
Yes.
So Boaz recognized that. Matter of fact, so then Boaz tells the harvesters, he says, hey, I want you to drop some while you're working. And then he goes and tells Ruth, he goes, hey, you know, I love what you're doing. I'm kind of paraphrasing. He goes, I love what you're doing for Naomi, my cousin. So I'll tell you what, don't go into anyone else's fields. When you want to pick up leftovers, come to my fields. Come here. And then he tells the men, hey, she don't have a husband. I want you to protect her.
Leave her alone.
Leave her alone. Make sure no men bother her. And I want you to drop extra grain for her. Because he didn't want to, like, what's it called when you give charity?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't want it to seem like...
Yeah, like if it was charity. Because I think that what that'll do, that can actually...
Humiliate her.
Humiliate a person as well.
So here she is. And all of a sudden, she brings all this grain back to Naomi. And Naomi starts rejoicing. Because she's like, how did you get this? You know, how did you get all this? And anyways...
And what I wanted to bring to light is, you say this all the time, that Ruth was actually harvesting from a field that she didn't even realize that was going to be her own. And you said this before in some sermons. And that's why I say that it's so important that we be careful with being bitter and crawling under a rock and self-condemning ourselves, because sometimes when we do that, we can miss our blessing, we can truly miss our blessing. And that was their blessing, not just Ruth, but Naomi as well, because Naomi from there, ended up having a grandson.
Well, I didn't, yeah.
So
yeah.
Are we really going to talk about the whole thing like that?
No, I don't know. Well, I wanted to, I guess we get forward. Then the fact of where Naomi left off, huh? At the end?
Yeah. There was a great reward there.
Yeah.
For her faithfulness, for her humbleness and everything. I didn't know we were going to go through the whole story.
Yeah, well, I started thinking about it, and I'm just like, we can't leave it at that, because like she's saying my name's bitter, call me bitter. And as we were talking, I'm like, okay, what's the upturn? What's the, how does the story change? Which, like you were saying, the fields that she was working in, she didn't know that she was going to own them.
Yeah,
because
one day.
Eventually, when you read the story, this man Boaz, this rich, wealthy man, married Ruth.
Yeah.
Married her and gave her a child. And all of a sudden, Naomi, who was bitter, who came back with nothing, lost her sons, lost her husband, now became the caregiver.
Yes, and she had a purpose. She had a purpose once again.
Yeah.
A purpose once again in her land that she once had purpose at one point and came back feeling like she had no purpose. And making that relevant to today, like I said, I think a lot of the times we realize that we sometimes go through things in life, and sometimes they're really, really hard things that you go through, and you begin to lose your self-confidence, and you don't feel as worthy, and you lose your self-worth. And you want to put up walls, or you want to climb under rocks, or you just want to sometimes be that lone Christian, and not realizing that what that does is it allows room for the enemy to come in and destroy what your blessing could have been and should have been.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we recognize that a lot of the times, God's plans, those are not our plans. Our plans are not God's plans. And we have to remember that he has a plan for us. And sometimes we're not going to understand why things happened or why things didn't go our way, but they don't for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's not up to us. It's up to us to say, okay, Lord, here is my life in your hand. I surrender it to you. And we just got to trust and believe that he's going to guide us the right way.
I think there's people watching too that maybe they feel like that, or they feel bitter, or they feel like
resentment or something.
Or like maybe there was a church or congregation or study you belong to, and all of a sudden things got hard there, so you left. But now you got nothing, and now you're like ashamed to show your face again, not realizing that the moment you walk in, people are going to embrace you.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's people that have left house arrest. Some people, that like, it's like, man, where are they at?
Yeah.
And if they would walk in, they'd be embraced. And I have had people come back and say, I didn't want to come back because I thought you wouldn't want me here. So just different situations, different things, and I don't know. It just, I think there's more of this than we realize or want to admit, that we're just bitter. We're like Naomi, and we feel like we're losers, and we don't even want to come back to God because we think he's going to reject us. And
it made me really think about it, because when we went today and I seen that man, the security guard talking to you, I could tell he was wanting to clean next to you. and he just wanted to talk to you, and I saw that. And, you know, every moment that he had, he was trying to talk to you and talking to you. He was talking to you. And I know that he had said that he had stepped away from church, and he had stepped away from God, you know, but obviously he loves Jesus because he saw your shirt and everything. So I just began to think like, wow, you know, somebody, and then he's like, I'm hurting. I just don't feel good about myself. And I just don't. And it just made me really think about how sometimes, you know, we can allow the enemy to come in and take that dignity and take that, you know, that wonderful feeling that we love about ourselves. And he will just keep it from us and make us believe that we're not good enough for God's kingdom.
That God don't want you.
Yeah, that God doesn't want us. We're not good enough for God's kingdom. We're not good enough for a lot of things. And sometimes we're not good enough for our spouses and everything. You know, I think that there was a moment even with you, you know, that I had told you, maybe I'll just sit there and I just won't say anything because I feel like I never have much, you know, I don't share like you do. I don't know, you know, I don't do sermons like you, or I don't remember. I would tell you that I'd start to feel a little insecure about that. But the thing is that God really began to show me, like, you know, everybody has something to share because everybody has had their a testimony.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to share their testimony. You know, and that is good enough. You share your heart. And I believe that man was sharing his heart today. He was finally crawling from under his rock, and he was wanting to share. And I really, really believe that we left, and he left with a big weight off of his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing, you know, is that we want people to come out of under their rocks and seek God in those areas.
You know, Naomi might have ran to Moab because Moab looked like the grass was greener on the other side. And you might have went back to the world because to you it looked like the grass was greener on the other side. And you realize you've lost everything. And this whole video is just to say, is Jesus says, come back. Come back. Because it's like they said, is this our Naomi? And Jesus is saying, isn't this our, and put your name in it.
And you know, if the grass is greener on the other side, think about it. It took a lot of work to keep that grass green, tending to and everything. So if you think it's easier to be where the grass is greener, well, don't forget that it takes a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of you. So if you're going to put in that effort, and if you're going to put all that in to that area, why not stay where Jesus is and put in the work and build your own garden?
Yeah.
You know, why not tend to the grass and care for it and love it and allow that to be your green grass?
Yeah. So many people complaining how the grass is green on the other side. Well, water your grass.
Yeah.
I didn't erase enough. See?
I think we're pretty much done now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're done. I just, you know, that was in my heart. You know, I pray that you guys are blessed, you know, and you have a beautiful, blessed weekend, because tomorrow is Saturday for you guys.
Yeah.
And then for us, you know, it will be Friday. So we'll see you guys on Sunday. And
that's it.
That's it.
God bless.
We love you guys. Take care. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.